The story of Saint Canutus, King.
Subscribe to our channel to receive more content like this.
Once upon a time, in the land of Denmark over 900 years ago, there lived a king named Canutus. Now, Canutus wasn't just any king. He was strong, intelligent, and brave. But what made him truly different was his deep, burning love for God. This is the story of how a powerful ruler became a humble saint, and how he gave up everything, even his life, to stay faithful to what he believed. Canutus was born into royalty around the year 1040. His father was King Sven of Denmark, and his uncle was none other than King Canute the Great, a man who ruled over a huge empire that included England, Denmark, and Norway. Canutus grew up surrounded by power. He learned to fight, to lead armies, to sit at royal tables, but he also learned something more important, the teachings of Christ. And as he grew older, his heart started turning more toward heaven than toward the throne. But when his older brother died, Canutus became king of Denmark. Now, you might think, great, a faithful king on the throne. What could go wrong? Well, quite a bit. At first, Canutus ruled with wisdom. He protected the poor, promoted justice, and built up churches across the kingdom. He even gave money and land to priests so they could serve the people better. But not everyone liked what he was doing. Some of the nobles, powerful men who owned land and led warriors, started getting nervous. Canutus believed the church should have the freedom to speak up, even against kings. And he believed everyone, rich or poor, should obey God's law. He also raised taxes, partly to support the church and partly to fund a new military campaign to reclaim England, a land his ancestors once ruled. That didn't sit well with the nobles. They didn't want to pay more. They didn't want to fight in another war. And they definitely didn't want to lose any of their power. Eventually, the anger boiled over. A rebellion broke out. The nobles and some of the people turned against Canutus. They didn't see him as a holy king. They saw him as a threat. Canutus fled with his loyal followers. They ran across the land through fields and forests until they reached a small town called Odense. There, he took refuge in the church of St. Alban. Now, imagine this: a king, once surrounded by soldiers and royal guards, now kneeling alone in a quiet church, praying to God for mercy. He knew his time had come. The rebels found him. They stormed into the church with weapons drawn, and in that sacred place, Canutus did not run. He did not fight. He did not beg. He knelt at the altar and forgave his enemies. Then, in an act that shocked even his killers, King Canutus was struck down, a royal martyr, in the house of God. He died on July 17, 1086. But that was not the end of the story. Something strange began to happen. People started coming to the church where Canutus had died, and miracles were reported. The sick were healed. The hurting found peace. And slowly, word spread that this king once hated and betrayed, had become a saint. In time, the Church officially recognized him as Saint Canutus, the patron saint of Denmark. His relics were placed in a beautiful shrine, and his memory was honored not as a failed king, but as a faithful servant of Christ. So, what can we learn from Saint Canutus? First, the true strength doesn't come from swords or thrones. It comes from the courage to stand for what's right. Second, that living for God often means swimming against the current. Canutus knew he was risking everything, but he chose to lead with justice and faith anyway. And finally, that no act of love or sacrifice is ever wasted. Even when the world turns against us, God sees, and He never forgets. St. Canutus reminds us that holiness isn't just for quiet monks or far-off saints. It's for kings. It's for workers. It's for you and me, if we're willing to follow the path of Christ, no matter the cost. St. Canutus, pray for us, that we may have courage like yours, and hearts set on heaven.